We've jumped into the portal. We're starting the wave. So now we are live. And I'm so
All right.
thankful to be back with my friend Jonathan Neal, who holds many titles
Oh,
and roles in the world.
I never
um,
knew.
and then just one of the exciting ones is, yeah, congratulations on your newlywedness
Well,
and
thank
that
you.
excitement. It really is so beautiful. It sounds like you all just came back from Joshua Tree and doing some really cool like
Yeah, yeah. We had
quest.
we had a really interesting adventure out there. That's for sure. Yeah, we'll talk about that one a little bit too.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll
So
get into some of that.
thank you for being up for this. And yeah, I love how before we came on camera, you were admitting that um, you're like, well, what do I have to bring to this conversation? Whether we're talking about relationships with other humans or in relationship with everything. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so I'm thankful that you were up for the adventure, however it
Yeah,
unfolds.
yeah. Well, thank you. And I mean, I think that what you just started to touch on, and there's it is true that when we think about like relationships with others, like we tend to kind of put that in these like separate categories. Like you have your relationship with yourself, you have
Mm.
your relationship with your friends, with your spouse, with the world at large, with the universe. But I really find that there's such interconnection between that. It's like you could sit here and say that like, yeah, well, you have this finger, but they're all part of one hand. They're all part of
Mm.
which is part of one body, and so our relationship, the way I think about it this way, like the way that we relate is an inner reflection, right?
Mm.
So it's going to spill over into all aspects, like whether you're talking about your relationship with the universe or with one individual or with yourself. All those things they're gonna depend on each other and they're gonna interrelate with each other. So you can't
Ah,
really be like, well, I have a really great relationship with life, but I have terrible relationships with other people. It's like
wow.
it's probably not. It's probably some inconsistency there. So
Ooh. And I love how you remind us it's a verb like to relate. Like I haven't gotten
yeah,
into that concept yet, that it's an action, right? That we're relating with things. And I think you're spot on with that, that how we relate with one thing is gonna spill over into how we relate with everything. And then that's what I love. I happened to pull that picture of you today in promoting about this there. You had a quote or you had said something about when we're in harmony with ourselves or in harmony with the whole universe or something. So that is a description of that. Mm.
well, and there's really is. I mean, that's really it. I mean, like there's either we're always relating. Like there's never a moment in human life that you're not relating to something. I mean, like existence on this dual plane, the
Mm.
life, what we call it, is relationship. Like you
Mm.
can't have existence without relation. I mean, like the basis of all existence is
Wow.
relationship, right? We have
Yeah.
top bottom, we have left right, we have masculine feminine, we have inside outside, like all these things relating, all these we talk about in yoga, like strength and softness don't fight each other, they interrelate. You have the strong trunk of the tree, you have the soft leaf. So there's always relationship happening. Like that is, it's
Mm.
not even happening. I mean, that's the ground of being, right? Is that
Jeez. Yeah.
if I don't know that you exist, then I don't really know that I exist, right? Because everything is in relation. You can even think about it like in space. Like if you just had one point in space, we would never know if that point was moving or not, right? The only time we'd be able to tell is if there's another point, and we can see if it's moving. And the
Mm.
more points that we get, the more we can tell who's moving what and who's moving where and all that stuff. So this relationship is always like that's it's not we can't escape from it. Like you can't just go even if you go move into the mountains and you become Mr. Mrs. Monk out in the mountain there and you just sit there in your cave and you breathe. There's still relationship with the air. There's relationship with the sun, with the food that you eat. There's always relating happening. So the real question, and that's why I say it is a verb, because we're always relating. Like life is a
Mm.
verb. You're
Mm.
never going to get a relationship. You're always going to be relating. Is the way I look at it. And like, that is very important because especially when we deal with interpersonal, if we think it's something we're going to get done, like oh I'm going to get it, then we stop doing the things that actually maintain that we stop relating and we just kind of assume a relationship. And we do that with ourselves, we do that with others. And it's just something I think, we need to be conscious of. I think it's something we need to be attentive to that we are uh, we're never out of that state. You can't just get slack on it. I always say it's kind of like taking showers. Like you might get really clean after your shower tonight, but if you go long enough without another one, like you're not going to stay clean. So you always have to be doing that. In the same way, we have to be aware that we're always relating, and then we have to kind of be mindful of the energy that we're
Mm,
bringing that.
mm. Wow, gosh, that is a powerful awareness. I had not gone there yet in my thinking on this. And yeah, why it is such a topic that's unavoidable. Like you said, it's just that is the very ground of existence, is to be in relationship with things in life and ourselves, and always that we're always relating. And it also reminds me of how that keeps us humble about our own perspectives too, right? Or just understanding that it's all coming from these various points of view, right? And that it's all so related to how we're
Can't get
relating,
away.
right?
Yeah, you can't escape it. So to
Mm,
me, it's yeah. I mean, it really is like we got to look at it as something that we're always doing, like breathing. You know, it's like we talk about conscious relationship, right? Um, I think about it this way, like in yoga or in other practices, meditation, we do conscious breathing, which just means that like the breathing is always happening. When you're watching Netflix, the breathing's happening. When you're laying in bed sleeping, the breathing's happening. So conscious breathing is just that we're bringing conscious attention and intention. So we start to maybe like control our
mm,
breath a certain number of seconds or a certain direction, but we also pay really close attention to it. And that's really just the basis of all this. So if we want to talk about a conscious relationship, relationship is always happening, just like breathing. You're doing it whether you know it or not.
yeah,
Conscious and whether you're intentional or not, you're doing it.
yeah.
So the only real question is like in yoga, like with the breathing or like with body movements, asana, like are you paying attention? Are you being conscious with your attention? And then are you also being intentional?
Mm,
Am I actually like paying attention to what's happening in my relationship? Am I listening to my partner? Am I really noticing, even more importantly, what I'm thinking about what they're saying? Am I being conscious and present and paying attention to what's happening when I'm relating with my partner or with any other person or thing? And then am I using that awareness to actually intentionally make different choices? Like my breath is always
mm,
moving, but when I come to yoga, I direct the inhale to the chest, I direct the exhale to the belly, I maybe try to lengthen it or whatever I'm doing. I'm putting intention into what I'm doing. But if my attention is gone, if I'm not paying attention, I can't really do that. So
mm,
whether breath or relationship with a person, it's always about first becoming aware. You start to bring presence, and then you start to, with the presence, you can start to set intention. You can start to act intentionally. And of course, that's really important because if you're always relating and you're not doing it with intention,
mm,
that's basically you're on a raft instead of on a powerboat, right? I mean, like you're out there and wherever, and that's where people are like, I
mm,
don't understand why I keep getting in these fights or why these things keep coming up because there's not attention and intention being present in that relationship. So we are, rudderless and anchorless, just drifting out there and whatever
mm, mm.
comes.
Right.
And as much as we want to go with the flow, is in many regards in our lives, it's still, that always all things need to be balanced, and we need to have some attention and some intent. I mean, that's literally what it means to be in a conscious relationship.
Mm, right. And that our intention is going to set our direction, right? And that we want to have a sense of direction with our intentions and our attention in the
Yeah.
way that we're relating in all ways, right? Because it's such a powerful force.
Well, and
What attention and intention we're bringing to that relating, right?
that directing brings up, the idea that you said of like setting a direction using that, and that's really important. And it's also important to remember, that one of the other things I see happen a lot in relationships, people are like, okay, well, I am going to be nicer. I'm going to do this thing. They do it for a short period. The other person still reacts in the same negative way they maybe did before. And they're like, nah, screw it. I'm not going to, I tried to be nice, but I'm not going to be nice anymore because they weren't nice back. And we got to think, using that analogy of a boat, when you're sailing a boat, like very small changes, if you give them time, will send you in a very different direction. So if you're heading straight down the equator and you just turn 3 degrees to the left, if you give that enough time and you stay that course, you'll end up very, very far south instead, right? That makes sense. So we need in a sense, like that's why, like when we set that direction, when we start to get intentional, we have to understand that it's going to take some time. And then if we think like, hey, I turned my rudder a little bit and I didn't get that far, we need to consistently apply that.
Right.
We can't just be like, well, me and my wife fight, so I'm going to try to be nice. You try to do one nice thing, she's still upset from the last thing, and then you say, no, oh, well, screw that. Uh, you can't, that's like just taking your boat and turning a little and then turning back. You're just doing this. We're not really. When you set a direction, you have to be very committed. I mean, that's the key to any good relationship, right? Is that we have to
Mm.
have commitment, not
Ah,
just to the relation, not just to like we're gonna stay together, but that we're actually I'm gonna stay the course towards building that more conscious, that better, that more intentional relationship. And I'm not gonna let that go just because of circumstance,
right.
right? Like,
And then just
yeah,
interesting within relationships how like we're committing to our use of attention too, right? Like if like we were talking about for a moment how you could imagine you might, and I too, you could bring some interesting things to the conversation as a newlywed, right? Versus someone who's 10 years in, 5 years in.
right.
And even yeah, considering what you're doing with your attention and intentions in your partnership right now, right? And how you are aware of how powerful that is, right? And that both of you are bringing in your attention and your focus, and that's playing a role in like you're co-creating, right? And how you're like setting the stage and the momentum for years to come. So I don't know, do you want to talk a little bit about if any of that resonates for you?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think that that's really the key is that I mean, first of all, you got to both get on the same page. You know what I mean? Like you can't have two people, you can't have one person turning the rudder one direction, the other person turning the other. You gotta, and that's of course, the kind of cliche thing is that communication is so important, and it is. But again, preemptive communication, like you got to sit down and like not wait until you're both upset because you're not going the right direction, but set that stuff ahead of time. Don't wait until you're in the middle of the ocean and you're lost to try to figure it out. Like set those intentions with each other. But you do have to be consistent, and it's really important to be on that same page in order to do that. And by consistent, of course, like we're always gonna mess up, right? Like no one is conscious and intentional 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But no one's perfect in that way. But at the same time, this is one of the things that I find is very, very important is that when it comes to relationship, like you gotta find a person that will pull you back. I always like I'm a gym fitness guy, so I always think like if you have like a gym partner, and there's two kinds of gym partners. There's the ones that makes you that's like no, I know you don't want to go, but we're gonna go anyway, and they drag you in there to do it. There's the other bad kind of gym partner that's the one that's like, oh, you don't want to go today? Yeah, I'll join you down at the donut shop, right? So you got to find someone that's willing to make that commitment. And although you'll both mess up sometimes, you have to find that person that when you're like, hey, when you're getting off course, they'll set you back, and when they're getting off course, you'll set them. But also doing that with loving intention and doing that with agreement. Not like
Mm.
you don't want to go course correct someone when they don't ask for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's again why it's conscious related. You have to be like on the same page. You have to be like, hey, look, we're both going to decide that this is where we want to go. There's going to be times where like maybe you falter, maybe I falter, but we've set this course, we've made this decision now, and we're just going to help each other to stay on that course as best we can. And in my experience, it's like that's really what makes the relationship stronger. It's not just especially we talk about like this honeymoon phase that we're in. It's like honeymoon phase is everyone talks about it being like, oh, everything's perfect and you just love each other. And there's never any arguments or fights, and that's just not true. There's always going to be there's always going to be differences, especially as you start to at the beginning when you're just moving
Mm.
in together and starting together.
Yeah.
But that's why it's important to have that because it's again we come back to that analogy of the boat. The storms are going to come. Wind's going to come, the current's going to change, things are going to happen. It's not just a perfectly flat ocean with no weather, right?
Mm.
So, but if you have that conscious intent and you've decided it together, even when you get a little blown off course here and there, you're able to kind of direct back because you have something you're actually directing at, right? Like if we said like, hey, we're going to get in a boat and sail to Hawaii, we might get blown a little south, we might get blown a little north, but we're going to keep correcting and keep making our way back towards that island until we get there. And that's, to me, that's really the key to this whole thing. And I feel like that's also true in your relationship with yourself, in your relationship with the universe or God or whatever you want to say. It's all relationship. It comes from within. With a partnership, though, of course, that's where we start to get into more of, you really got to be on the same page. My relationship with myself is up to me. My relationship with life is up to me, pretty much. That relationship with the other, that's where it gets complicated, because we have to be on that same page, and we have to both be intending to, if I want to go to Hawaii and she wants to go to Samoa, there's going to be issues, right? So, but at the same time, a lot of those things can be talked out, and a lot of those things, we need to really communicate, and we need to be open, and we need to be willing to change our own perspective. I found personally that a lot of times, like, the biggest problem, we always say this in everything, this is what you find in yoga and every other meditation is the biggest problem is always me. And it's not like my fault that we have a problem, but just, it's not so much the problem, I should say the solution to any problem always lies within me. And that means that, when we're in that relationship with that other person, yes, that other person's there and they're an important part of that, but I can't decide them, but I can control and decide what I do. And so my part of the relationship is to do my best. And we need to make sure that we do that regardless. This is where we come back to that, like, pulling each other back on. We need to do that regardless of what the other person is doing. Because sometimes I might be upset, sometimes she might be upset, but we got to be that anchor for that other person by keeping that intention and keeping that. So, a relationship, whatever it's with, it ultimately, comes down to the individual. It comes down to you and what you're going to do.
Right? Yeah. And gosh, I had a thought coming through, but it passed. But oh gosh, I know what it was. It's a good one. Okay, it's a good question for you. Because I noticed this with myself too. Like, if, like, I can think of you as someone who maybe before you got into this amazing partnership and decided to get married and got all caught up in the connection there, that you were someone who had gotten in your mode of feeling connected and finding your connection, right, a lot within yourself, right, or in your spiritual ways, and really maybe you'd gotten, like, good at that, right? But I find, like, it's easy when we fall in love, for instance, to start to look to that other person for that and forget to look within ourselves, right? Or to look more spiritually. So, and that's where sometimes the dynamics can get rocky, right? When we're looking for that sense of connection through the other person, right? Because they can't always fill that, right? So, did you find yourself, like, facing that at all as you've merged more in partnership and needed to find ways to keep rooted in your practices, things like that?
Yeah, and I think that's really is a great point. That and it's something that's relatable to me. I've always, I'm a big person on self-reliance. I've lived alone. I've lived on my own for a long time. I haven't had a relationship for a long time, and really have gotten good at that. If you'd say, like, I could, fulfill all my own needs. I was very, I could take care of myself in every way, and then when you do get into that actual relationship where you're living together there is, it's like anything, like there's this tendency to kind of fall back on that other person for things that you can supply for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's good, and it's okay for us to ask help and be vulnerable, but it is again, coming back to, like, my fitness analogies, there's a lot of supplements that people use that if you use them too consistently, your body's ability to provide that substance for you starts to decrease. Let's say, like, if you take creatine all the time, eventually your body's ability to create it starts to go down because it's like, hey, I don't need to do this,
Yeah.
right? And so that is very important. That's a great point. That if we start to just put all of our, first of all, it's not fair to put all of our emotional and other needs on these other people, especially ones we know we can handle ourselves. But again, it decreases our ability to handle. Like,
Yes.
as we start to push that responsibility onto the other person, like, well, you need to keep me emotionally well, then yeah, we start to lose our own ability to keep ourselves emotionally well. Even if like I said, even if we were really good at it before, it starts to fade without, everything fades without training, right? Like I said, if you stop
Mm.
taking showers, it doesn't matter how clean you are today, in a couple of days you're going to be dirty. So, we need, yeah, I mean, it comes back to consistency, and that's consistency and remembering to do what you need to do for yourself. And this is another point that I wanted to get into, is that a relationship is between two people, but the people are what makes the relationship. So if the individual people are not doing their self-care and their own thing, I need to do my yoga, she needs to do her yoga. If we're not doing that, then we have two broken parts trying to come together, so to speak. And that's not going to make a very good. So if you really want to have a good relationship, you still need to be doing these things for yourself. You still need to do that. And it ties right in with that, because if you're not, like if I stop doing my yoga because I'm like, I don't need to do that anymore, she'll just take care of me, then I lose that ability.
Yeah.
And then,
And you're going to show
let's say
up a
she,
lot different. Yeah.
yeah, and again, and at the end of the day, aside from losing your own ability, like it's just not, that's not right or fair to, if you, yes, our partner, yes, our friends, our family, and our partners are always there to help us, and we should respect that, and we should be willing to look out for help. But we should really be sparing in that and make sure that we're not just overburdening them because we're being lazy. We don't want to get emotionally or spiritually lazy. Still do your own practices, still take care of yourself, still handle what you can handle on your own. But yeah, at the same time, you still do. You don't want to. There's a lot of connection that can happen by working through problems together too. So
Yes, that too, right? To not be afraid of conflict and a disconnect, because, right, that often is part of getting more connected and feeling more connected too, is to work through the conflicts and to be willing to communicate through the stuff, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, very important to and this is why I said, like, this is another thing that I was thinking about before we got on here. And I was like, I've been in those really I've heard people talk about them, like, where they're like, well, we never fight, we never have any conflict, and my experience and my opinion on that is that is a red flag, um, because to me it just feels like there's things just being buried there, because there's always conflict in the same way, because again we come back to the idea, everything is relationship, everything's always relating. And in relationship, when things meet, when particles meet, some of them have a nice reaction, some of them have an explosive reaction, but things are always meeting, things are always relating. So there's going to be times where you meet well together, and there's going to be conflict if you're
Yeah.
really being honest, if you're really being
Yeah.
authentic.
Right.
The conflict will come, and we shouldn't, as you said, we should seek to resolve it. Like, we don't want to live in a state of constant conflict, but we shouldn't seek to bury it or push it away or avoid it, because as you said, and this has been shown in like team building and businesses and stuff like that, that when your team, your partnership, whatever, goes through conflict, they go through challenges together, they face hard times between each other and other things, that they actually come out stronger, with a stronger bond. And they
Yeah.
found this with, when people speak their mind to their boss or something like that, in many cases that actually
Mm.
makes that boss respect them more. And it's
Mm.
the same thing in an interpersonal relationship, of course, that if you're not being authentic, you're not telling the truth, you might get away with it verbally, but the energy will be there, and the energy will ultimately direct that relationship. And if that energy
Mm-hmm.
is authentic, and if we're not engaging in what is the natural course of things, which is good times and conflict together, yeah, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I appreciate that, and that does feel so important for us to be open and aware of, right? And a more holistic view of what a healthy relationship can look like and feel like.
Well, and if we have that, if we've set that conscious intention, if we're living a conscious relationship, then again, you're conscious of the conflict as well. Like, you even know when that comes, you're able to not just have it be overwhelming. Not, it's like, again, when that storm comes, like, you already have a plan. You're gonna take the sails down. You're gonna you know what to do. You start to you have a conscious direction even towards the conflict. And that helps to make it through a lot better than just like screaming, yelling. Like if you're both like, look, we have an issue, we're going to deal with it in these ways. These are the ways that we decided that it
Mm,
work for us, that we're going to talk it through. It's way better to show. If there's going to be battles, you want to have a battle plan. You want everyone in that relationship to be involved,
mm,
to be on the same page in that,
wow.
because
Yeah.
it just makes it, again, like then you don't have to fear and avoid conflict because you can go into it
Uh,
knowing that you have a system, you have some kind of conscious
mm,
intentional plan
mm.
of how you're going to work that out and how you're going to resolve that.
That makes so much
So again,
sense. Yeah.
being conscious, being paying attention, and being intentional will obviously not only get you through them better, but that knowledge that you can get through them better is going to allow you to really just confront them as they show up. And that's another huge thing is that having the confidence to confront conflict when it shows up is important because if you don't, then it festers and then it blows up or shows up in a much bigger form later on.
Yeah.
So being proactive and assertive in taking care of like, look, if she's upset, I'm not just going to sit there for the whole day and be like, what's she upset? Like, no, we sit down and we deal with it now because letting it take time is just letting that, it's like leaving a infected wound to just sit there. Like, you want to treat it now. If you treat it now, it'll be much easier and better than if we
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because there's a momentum to things, and it's just going to get worse and bigger if you don't. If you
Yeah,
don't,
and the
right?
inertia is going to carry that negative energy forward just as well as it can carry positive. And that's really our job. Really, our job in a conscious relationship. Not everything's going to be positive all the time, but to cut that channel and to send it in that direction. To when we see, not avoiding the negative, not ignoring it, but addressing it quickly and decisively and immediately.
Yeah.
So we're not, again, we're not trying to get rid of it, but we are trying to make sure that, like, look, if that crops up, if there's a bump, and if there's a hole in the boat, I'm fixing it today. I'm going to go down there right now, and I'm going to plug that hole, and I'm going to make sure that it's fixed well. I'm not going to wait until tomorrow, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
not, because then we'll be underwater and it'll be too late.
Yeah. I think that's an important awareness that it is energy, and it's important to attend to things sooner than later with anything involving
Move into your
energy.
this, and this is again just in relationship to yourself.
Yeah.
I tell people about like move into your challenges willfully. And this is what I like to call saying yes to life in all of its forms. Like it's very easy to say yes to life when it's easy, but can we really just like say like, okay, yeah, there's a challenge here. I'm not going to be afraid of it. I'm not going to be upset by it. I'm going to embrace it. Because one thing that we learn when we do that is that, again, the challenge is the opportunity. And when you and your partner get through that challenge, get through that conflict, the reward will be a stronger relationship. If you avoid all the it's like if you avoid going to the gym because it sucks to lift weights, you're just going to get weaker, your muscles are going to atrophy, and it's going to fall apart, your health is going to decline. But if you're willing to go and show up and face the challenge head on and challenge yourself willfully, intentionally, and consciously, then there's nothing you can't do, there's nothing you can't have, and you really can. um, you can't always tell what the ocean's going to do, but you can always set your rudder and set your course. And it makes a
Mm,
big difference. If you've ever been in a boat before, it makes a really big difference if you have a rudder or not.
right. Yeah. And that's where it's helpful if we're doing what we can to just keep finding ways to set our own rudder, right, and our own direction, and how
Well,
that's
and
going to
being
affect how
conscious,
we're relating.
keeping an eye on that, we call it the compass as well, because it's the same thing. Like if you start to notice that compass veering off, like don't wait, because like we said before, even just 3 degrees of change in that angle of the boat, like
Yeah,
you could end up
can really
over another
change.
island.
Yeah, your
You could end up
trajectory.
in Australia instead of Hawaii, and that's a pretty big difference by just a few degrees over time. So that's why, like, if you notice that the course that conflict come, like, turn that rudder now. Get that rudder. Like, don't let yourself veer further and further and further off course, because then you just got to come back. You're gonna have to come back and correct the course later anyway.
Mm,
And that's why I will say, if you avoid trouble, if you avoid pain, you avoid conflict, it'll always show up.
hmm.
It always will come. It's going to be a lot harder, a lot rougher You're going to be a lot more off course if you want to deal with it as soon as you see that compass moving. That's when you want to break out your tools that you've hopefully, again, consciously and intentionally set up with your partner ahead of time, and then you get to work on getting your course back on.
Yes. Wow. That makes sense. And it's so helpful, really. I'm so thankful for your insights. And yeah, it's just, yeah, you bring a cool combo to the conversation at this
Well,
stage in
that's why
your journey. So what's that?
that's why they call it a relationship.
Ooh, wait,
It's a little
like
book.
having, oh, I get it. Bringing in
It's the
the boat
relationship.
reference.
That was my
Nice.
whole analogy. So I didn't prepare for today, but I did. I didn't prepare by writing things down, but I did prepare by making a pun out of this whole thing. So
Oh, so
that's
you
what.
already had gotten that. Well done.
Well,
Well done. That was like a Seinfeld moment or
I don't
something.
know a whole lot, but I'm pretty decent with puns, so I'll bring that.
That helps.
But yeah, but that's always I mean, to me, it just makes the most sense. I mean, I'm not even a big sailing guy, but there's so much analogy to that, just keeping that course. And, I mean, and the other thing is, like, when you think about those old ships, it's like there really was this crew of people that any person wasn't doing their job, like, it could lead to disaster. And, like, everyone had to be on point. Everyone had to be conscious, paying attention, really fulfilling their role. And whether we have a relationship with two people or like a group and business, like always important to make sure that the members of the team are on the same team and have the same intention. And so the
Yeah.
beginning of all this stuff that we talked about, like when you're sitting at that port and you're starting, and we're newlyweds and we're starting our life right now, where we're at is setting up those tools, setting up and deciding that direction and making sure that we're on the same page. So,
Yeah.
people that have been together for a while, they might have a different, kind of set of things, but anyone that's where I'm at, that would be my suggestion. Before you set your relationship out to sea too far, start to figure out where you're going. Start to figure out what you're going to do if there's a storm. Start to figure out what you're going to do if your, rudder breaks. I mean, all these things. Start to figure out those things so that when those things come, because they're going to come, they're going to happen. That you already have it. You know what you're going to do. You have a plan, and you guys can execute that plan.
Yeah. I like how you call it a battle plan.
I mean,
Makes sense.
sometimes it's a storm and sometimes it's some raiding pirates. So you never know what's coming next. But again, but having preparation, sitting down consciously and being like, hey, look, I know, honey, that sometime we're gonna fight. I don't want us to be that couple that just like sits there and piss. What are we gonna do when we fight? Not while you're fighting, like before the
Yeah.
storm. You want to don't figure out what you're gonna do in a storm when there's halfway flipped over, right? Like
Right.
don't try to come up with your plan while you're fighting.
Mm.
Before sit down and be like, look, these, so that you're on that same page and that you can, that way when you get there, you guys are both like, oh, okay, yeah, we're going to catch ourselves. We're going to use the plan that we had. And, there's going to be times it doesn't work. The storm's too big, but for the most part, you're going to have a way better trip if
Mm.
you have, it's like maybe, if you have life jackets, if you have all those other emergency flares and stuff, you're going to have a much better time out at sea, even if something bad does happen, than if you just, went out there with a backpack full of water.
Yeah, right. Make sure you're all on the same ship.
Yeah, you gotta
The
be on the
same
same
ship in
ship,
this
and you want to make sure
relationship.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about it this way: like if you're on the ship and you're taking turns steering, and when you guys have a different idea of where you're going, then all night while I'm steering, I'm going this way, and then I go to bed. She wakes up in the morning and
Right.
starts steering the ship. She's
Yeah.
going the other way.
It's going to be a rocky ride if you
We're
keep
not going to end up where either of us wanted to be, much less where we both wanted to be.
totally right. It's not going to get you to either of your
Yeah.
intentions. So,
This is what you call
uh,
lost at sea, and that's not where you want to
oh
be.
my gosh, wow,
Yeah.
great!
Spooky.
I love how that all came together. So well done. Uh, well, I know as usual that was, but we did pretty good at staying within the time usually because sometimes
Yeah.
I
That's
want
not
like
too
twice
bad.
as long when you're on here. But is there anything
Yeah.
else you'd want to say as we would call this to a close like moment?
No, I mean, really, the only thing I'd always say is, I mean, any video. I mean, I like to make videos where I tell people what to do with their lives and all that stuff and their bodies. But my real intention is that, I find this is something that I do and that I think that a lot of us do is that we consume this kind of content. We sit there and we're like, wow, yeah, he knows what he's talking. That's really smart. But proof is in the pudding, everybody. I mean, like you got to apply. Like, you know what I mean? Like how much good advice have we heard? And we're just like, man, if I'd applied that good advice, I'd have a lot better life. So, if any of this resonates with you, if this makes sense to you, if you want to get your relationship on track, do it. You got to actually do it because sitting around and talking about sailing isn't sailing. So, that's the last. That's the only thing I would say. That, you know, take this
Nice.
stuff. If it works for you, if it sounds good to you, take it and please use it because you know, as much as I love talking, I'd rather you actually get something out of it.
Right. And it can influence the doing and the action, right? And not just the thought processes. So I hear
Yep.
that.
You got to put the
And
boat in the water. It doesn't do anything just sitting in dry dock.
yeah. So, and will you tell us, people who are new to you, how to find you for future
Yeah, so
reference and following you and such? Mm-hmm.
yeah, my name is Jonathan Neal, as you maybe could see on the screen here. I do personal training, fitness, group fitness. I teach yoga. I teach some meditation type stuff. You know, also just, you know, I like to talk to people. So if you just wanted to get to know me, you can find me by my name right here on Facebook. My Facebook is totally open and vulnerable, so I don't really have any privacy. Come on by, be a friend. It's all good. I'm also on Instagram at Jonathan Neal and then the word fitness. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now. But you know, feel free to reach out, friend. Pretty open guy. Uh, you know, and we'll yeah, I'll be more than happy to meet some new people. So if you like this
Yeah.
kind of
And you
stuff,
have a YouTube channel too, don't you, Jonathan?
oh
That
yeah,
you've been
yeah,
adding to?
yeah.
What's that one called?
Apparently I do. Yeah, and so that's just under Jonathan Neal Fitness as well. I mean, if you
Okay.
search for that, I don't think there's too many other Jonathan Neal Fitnesses, so it should be the only one out there. But I actually have an old channel up there that apparently videos show up from that sometimes from a little tiny little little young spiritual adventurer, but you know, I got a new one up. I need to keep working on it, but yeah, it's up there, fitness stuff and other stuff on there too. So
Mm,
anyway, yeah, but more than happy to connect on any platform, you guys.
yes. Well, thanks so much, Jonathan. I benefited from this conversation and totally helpful for me. So I can totally know it will be for other people. Really.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you very much, Laura. I appreciate you
So
always, you know, giving us all this opportunity to get up here and run our mouths a little bit about all these fun topics.
to intellectualize a little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
good
mean, every
though.
once in a while, you can't just sit and meditate all the time. You got to use your brain occasionally.
Right. Thanks so much, Jonathan. All right.
All right,
Well, have a great day out there.
you as
Cheers to
well.
you and your wife.
Yeah, you as well. Take care and have a
Okay.
happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. All right. Cheers, you all. Thanks for being here. Namaste.
Bye bye, everybody.